and welcome to another fantastic episode of This Uncanny Earth, your weekly paranormal place for all things uncanny. As always, I'm your host, Robert Solomon. On my right, that I see, would be Spider, and then beneath us would be the one, the only Steven the intern. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
I'm here.
Well, I'm a bit under the weather today. I've got kind of a heavy voice and things, and I woke up just not really feeling that great. So I'm gonna try to get through all this because this is a topic that was basically my kind of a topic. So I'd hate to be left out.
Yeah, this is you. This is basically your show at this point.
It's the Demon Show.
Is it though?
That's what the title says.
I mean, you can get fired too, so don't think you can't get fired. So, gentlemen, as a person who has studied demons and demonology myself over many years, what are your take on demons? Let's just run right that. Let's run that. Let's
All
start
right.
with you. No, let's start with Spider because you're the
Okay.
you're a little bit more intricate than this.
Well, it's an interesting evolution of concepts. Modern day, the the popular idea, both in our pop culture and among a lot of our the big religions, is that demons are 100% evil, malevolent entities that are out to lead you astray, to possibly destroy you, to take your soul, all those kind of things. And we see that a lot. We've got games about it. We've got movies about it. You go to churches on Sundays, a lot of times that's what they'll say. Um, it's based off of an earlier concept, though, of a type of spirit that wasn't necessarily evil per se. Um, it's that they were more chaotic as opposed to the more angelic beings, which were more ordered and more rules oriented, which is probably where a lot of the concept evolved from. Because as we know, if you follow the rules, you are a good person. If you don't follow the rules, you are a bad person, as far
Right.
as modern society goes. And the Greeks specifically used to spell it differently as well. They spell the Daemon rather than, and sometimes Daimon rather than just De. So the spelling has changed a little bit, which could also have something to do with the way that it's evolved etymologically. Etym, et, etymology?
Etymologically,
Etymologically, that's really what I'm going for. It's a complicated word. Um, Another thing about demons is that they tend to have very long multi-syllabic names for the most part. Not always, because you have the classic demon known as Baal, Baal, and there's some history to that might open some people's eyes about that because that's more a title rather than a name, but it became a name as time went on. So you've got things like Mephistopheles and Beelzebub and Astaroth and a lot of like these big names that sound kind of menacing. And that's part of it too. These are all speaking, different ways of speaking and presenting of much earlier pre-religious names and titles. So before I get too far into the meat of everything here, I don't want to take over and grandstand the whole thing, but that's the basics as far as when I first started looking into the topic.
So let me get this joke out of the way. This joke was given to me by Apple, so I figured I would tell it. Um, where do teachers like to go on vacation?
I'm not allowed to say.
Times Square.
That would only be the math teachers.
I tried to say summer school.
He did say summer school, but that fell flat.
Yeah. No one liked my answer either.
That would only be the
Well, nobody
math
really likes
teachers.
you either, though. So
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm
We're
kidding.
used to it.
Yeah. Well, you are. Everybody loves me,
Yeah.
so I don't get the.
No, I meant everyone was used to not liking me, and I'm
Oh,
used to them not liking me. Like
I
a
see what you did there.
collective.
We like you. That's why you're still on the
Yeah.
show, but that's
The
starting to wear
only
thin.
reason.
That's starting to wear thin. So
Yeah.
they're gonna shoot you out of a cannon into the sun.
Ooh,
Over
that'll
a
be
shark.
fun. No
Yeah,
pain, I'll die instantly.
comes the shark. Good call.
Yeah, over a shark, because you got to go over the shark,
I
because
thought you
that's
had
how
to
you know
jump the
the
shark,
show's
right?
over.
On the
That's
shark
it. You
with
gotta
Fonzie.
jump while you fly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Fonzie on the shark.
And
Yeah.
E.T.
So, all right, yourself, there, Steven, the intern man. Demons, thoughts.
Okay, so I guess my first experience with demons would probably be like around the year 2006, probably the earliest I can think of. The TV show Supernatural, obviously. So it's a big part of my life, and I've been a big fan of it for years. And without going on a whole rant, I'll just leave it at that. But they introduce demons in that show, and they go over them quite a bit, and they introduce like some of the popular demons, and they have Crowley actually represented as the King of Hell. But continuing on from that, I've also played the Shin Megami Tensei games, where you basically get to like, you know, negotiate with demons and try to recruit them to your party, and they'll help you fight and stuff. And I've just always had a general interest in demons. Like some of their stories have always been very interesting to me.
Okay. With me, it goes back to when I was a child at church, where you would learn about the different demons that Christ sent into the swine to run them over the cliff. The demons that had possessed different people throughout the New Testament, things of that nature. And then you learn about their names later on in books like the Testament of Solomon, where you learn about Asmodan, Asmodeus, all of them, the Duke of Hell and everything else. And so once you start learning, you realize that this isn't the only religion, and Islam talks about this as well, about demons or in some cases jinn. They can be swiped depending on the chaos they cause. But demons only can cause as much chaos as God will allow them to cause. They don't have a technical free reign of just whatever. And the magical ring that is given to Solomon by the archangel Michael is a key and point to this, because Michael gives it to him to subjugate demons. And so by subjugating the demons, it also allows Solomon to build the temple. And it's thought that Solomon used these demons to build the very first temple to God himself, which would be, ironic given the circumstances of demons and what their job is and who they're against, to build a temple for God. And there's many tales like in Islam and in Christianity of Solomon making these demons uh, do his bidding, making them fly to get what he wants to bring back to him, and knowing that there's nothing they can do about it. He can force pain on them. He can force anything he wants, because that ring gives him a sort of all magical, all knowing power. And in Islam, it's Suleiman, and Christianity and Judaism, it's Solomon. So different pronunciations, just like Abraham and Ibrahim, two different pronunciations. So my experience with demons lies mostly in the church, because I didn't learn a lot of the stuff via Islam and things of that nature until well after. But we also need to take into account there are demons in other religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, all of that have demon like beings that reside within.
Another interesting point too is that as far as the modern religion outlook on demons is that they don't see demons as part of a overall family of entities that
Mhm.
existed on their own. They see them as having once been angels to begin with, and due to various flaws that they had, which essentially boil down to things like the seven deadly sins. A lot of demons are attached to one of those generally, and
Yep.
that's why they fell, and that's how they tempt people. They became fallen angels, and because they fell, they became grotesque, they became monstrous, they became a reflection of the evil thoughts that they had and the evil that they had committed that caused them to fall. Um, and that contrasts with earlier outlooks, where even the earlier Jewish outlook was that demons were a distinctly separate bit. They were descended from Lilith, rather than from an angelic line on their own. And so they were a distinctly different part of it. It wasn't until you got till up to Christianity and then Islam, because Islam, it basically feels that same way, that they became, having once been good, and it basically turned into the cautionary tale that this is what happens to people who betray the creator. They become monstrous and grotesque.
Um, I To answer Apple's question, my personal favorite interpretation of a demon has to be via Islam, because Islamic demons are different than the Christianized version of said entities. The ability to control them, though, in via the Testament of Solomon, via the different aspects of the Quran itself, fascinate me to no end. That is my personal favorite interpretation, would be from Islam, and how they were able to subjugate the demons to the will of one man, to have him build these wonderful contraptions. Because in Islam, it's a little bit different, and there's contraptions that are built by these demons, and the essences and everything else, and the materials that are needed. So in Islam, they look as more like workhorses.
So
Like,
he
you
is
will do our bidding, huh?
So I was gonna say, so he essentially turned the demons into like his slaves, basically.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's how he built. Well, in Islam, that's how he built certain inventions, things like that. In esoteric Christianity, that's how he pretty much built the temple in the Kabbalah and things like that. More Jewish mysticism. Then, because in the New Testament, it doesn't really talk of Solomon having demons work for him, but in, like I said, the Testament of Solomon, the apocryphal books of that nature, that's where it goes more in depth. But once again, we have to remember the Council of Nicaea removed a lot of these books because they were afraid of the truth getting out. So the Council of Nicaea sliced the books up and kind of sent them on their way, and then they left us with just a smaller version of the Holy Scriptures themselves.
Another interesting point is that the story, whether historical or not, of Solomon being able to control the demons is another illustration meant to point out that these beings, they rebelled to have a certain level of freedom that they didn't have before, but it's supposed to explain to you that there's only one overall creator, there's only one being that's in control of everything, and you can't really rebel against him because he's omnipotent, omniscient, all powerful, etc. And if you rebel and you do whatever you want, it's supposed to illustrate that you were allowed to do so, but eventually the bill comes and you got to pay for
Well,
what you did.
he's the grand creator. Everything that was created comes from him. Demons, angels, messengers, jinn, all of it came from him in the beginning. So the idea that they're rebelling against something that they're chemically made up of doesn't fit. But he allows it to prove a point that, okay, you want to rebel, but in time you'll come back. As all mankind will come back. Everyone will come back. I draw everything back to myself, including demons, devils, all of it. God draws everything back to himself. My favorite media interpretation will always be Gustave Doré. Gustave Doré is probably my favorite painter all time. Like his work with Paradise Lost, his work with the Old and New Testament, his work with Dante's Inferno. His work with Dante's Inferno is probably the greatest Dante's Inferno interpretation. I haven't seen any better. Dolly's is okay, but Gustav's encapsulates what the Inferno actually was about, and being able to, walk when they're in, the final level of hell, which is basically one giant ice lake, because betrayal is a cold thing. It's cold blooded. So there's betrayal meaning cold. That's why the Nephilim, that's why the fallen ones, that's why the watchers, the messengers, all that are all trapped in places of ice, because there's points, there's keys, there's understanding involved in all of this. Once you betray somebody, it's an act of coldness. It's not an act of heat. Heat is other, but cold is different. When you can betray somebody, there's a coldness to you. It's not, you're not betraying out of the warmth of your heart. it's more of a cold heart that allows something like that to happen. So as long as we're looking at that, we understand that these cold regions might be a place that hides these beings. Now, I split. I don't equate demons and the fallen ones as the same thing. Demons and the fallen ones to me are separate entities. They're not the same in my personal viewpoints. Um, so, like Asmodeus and all of them are separate, but they are the ugly vices of human beings. We'll get into that a little bit later. Anyways, gentlemen, continue. My apologies.
You also have, as far as classical art is concerned, you've
Mhm.
got the artwork by Hieronymus Bosch,
Yep.
which is a bit more horrific. It's supposed to show more of the grotesque and more of the like. Also, this is what will happen to you if you deal with demons, because it shows them routinely
Yep.
mauling, chewing on, devouring, doing pretty awful, terrible things to humans to make a point to say, hey, this is what happens when you do evil. These demons are going to get you, and these are the kind of things they're going to do to you. A
Like the
lot of it
bird eating
was,
the human.
yeah,
Bird eating the human.
yeah. A lot of that was a something of the times, because they were
Right.
very harsh on people, because it was the Dark Ages when a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff came out. And they felt like, hey, things are really bad right now, and the only way we're going to keep you guys focused on the church and focused on doing the good things and serving the feudal lords and things, which was a big part of it as well, is by frightening you to the point that if you do anything bad, this is the horrific stuff that's going to happen to you.
Well, we have to remember too that Dante's Inferno was more a play on the times that they were in, because it goes on to talk about specific leaders that existed then and before, and where they were at in their positions to hell, Purgatorio and Paradiso, and where they were at. And a lot of it was a commentary. Dante's Inferno is a very much social commentary on the ruling bodies, church figures, things of that nature. And a lot of that stuff, like he's talking about, was more of a commentary on the times. Like he said, the bird eating the human in half, things of that nature, is more to keep people in line because of the times they were living in. The Dark Ages were the Dark Ages for a reason. They didn't have clean water. They didn't have diseases were running rampant. People weren't educated enough. This is the time when people were drinking mercury. I had a conversation with who did I talk to? I literally was talking to somebody about this like yesterday, about people drinking mercury, because they thought it was a good idea. Thought it was a great idea. Newton drank mercury. A lot of them guys drank mercury because they thought it was a holy elixir, and they got mercury poisoning. Because you don't drink mercury, you just don't do that. You can use it to fuel different things that we could get into at another show, but that was the time. Like, there was a lot of like miracle elixirs. There was the quest for the philosopher's stone. So when you're reading these and you're seeing these portraits, understand it's more of a commentary on the times and meant to sort of keep people in line, than it was to show the truth of whatever they were trying to say. Yes. Deadpool. What do you got?
My favorite media interpretation of Satan or demons,
No, just demons
in general. Does Satan count as a demon?
That's a good philosophical point.
Well, he would be the chief of demons, as it said. Yeah. So yes, I would think so.
Okay, because I've always really enjoyed I guess it would work for demons in general, but I've always really enjoyed the interpretation of demons possessing people and then being like highly charismatic and suave, and using that to manipulate people into doing their bidding for them while still maintaining a human body that they can walk around in and, get their physical vices however they like, and they don't have to worry about anything because they possess, I don't know, like a president or a rock star or a politician or something like that, and force and just use their power in order to make other people do whatever they want.
Now, see, I don't believe in that necessarily. I don't believe a in that regard, like when we're talking of demonic possession in terms of an entity actually entering you. But what I do think is when we see things like greed, right? Greed.
Yeah.
When somebody gets so to where they're the greediest person, they just want. That is a form of demonic possession. I think we, in our heads, we like to think demonic possession is The Exorcist, right? We like to think demonic possession is Annalise Michael, even though it came out that Annalise Michael suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and that taking her off her medication is really what signaled her downfall, because you can't pull meds from somebody cold turkey. It basically broke her brain. But I think demonic possession is in terms of like, oh, I want my neighbor's wife, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get my
And you don't
neighbor's wife,
care.
or I will step on anybody's toes to get to what I want to, because I am a greedy human being. I don't believe some entity just possesses you and all of a sudden you're throwing up green vomit and you're climbing the walls. Now,
Yeah.
there have been cases of this happening, but I lean more towards it being a more emotional, sort of driven, like, I want to be the most greediest person I can, so I'm going to step on you, your mom, everybody in your family to get what I want. I think that is the true form of demonic
Yeah.
possession.
And I was
It's
gonna
those vices.
also add to that, actually. I also like that interpretation of possession, and I've also seen some forms of media. For me personally, there was an old game on the GameCube called Geist. It was about
Remember,
a
guys?
poltergeist, not demons, but
No, I remember
one of
this.
one of the game mechanics was before you could possess people, you had to scare them and weaken them down first mentally. So like
Yep.
I've seen some forms of media in the past that have represented it as a slow descent into becoming more of an evil person, like you said.
Mhm.
And it's more like they at first they resist and they're like, no, I can't do that. That's bad. That's bad. I can't do that. And then one time they give in one time, and then it becomes a steady downhill slope from
Yep.
there.
It's
No.
kind of like a slow intravenous drip, sort of like you get hooked
Yeah.
on something in little bits and pieces. And an interesting point that I think helps illustrate that a little bit is that while we have a sensationalized view of demonic possession being they take over your body and they make you physically do things, the whole thing about it, of a demonic entity, classically before that got to be popular, was that they got into your head and they got you to do the thing. They made you made the
Mind games.
choice.
Yeah.
You made the choice to do it, because that's what makes it. It's
Yeah.
not as effective if they make you do it,
Right.
because that's them doing it. It's not spreading any extra sinful behavior around. If they
Right.
get
Trying to
you to do it,
twist your soul, right?
yeah, they're
Yes.
corrupting you in bits and pieces. And there's
Yeah.
an interesting point illustrated in a book that was co-written between Neil Gaiman, which we've talked a lot about on the show, and Terry Pratchett. It's called Good Omens. It is actually a series on Amazon that I
Watched
watched a
it.
few episodes and I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
It's not super accurate. Well, it's mostly accurate to the book,
It's
but not,
funny though.
Um, but there's a demon in that who was a fallen angel, and his name is Crowley, which is another little coincidence.
Yeah.
And he's talking to a couple of other demons about what have you done to advance the agenda of evil and whatnot today. And one of them says, oh, I've planted a seed in this dude that his wife's been cheating on him, and he's gonna do all this stuff, and we'll have his soul within like a year. And then the other demon's like, oh, well, I've been talking to this priest and I've been seducing him with the tithes and all these other things, and we'll have his soul within 6 months. But Crowley says, I got the humans to invent a set of highways that are constantly clogged with traffic, that drive people absolutely nuts with just anger and rage because they're stuck on this highway, and every second they're thinking of how many people do I have to run off the road to get where I'm going, spreading these
love that
little
part.
mountains of sinful thoughts everywhere. And the other two can't understand it. They're like, how does that help? He's like, well, look at all the evil that I'm spreading just from this little annoying road that I've made. And that's what really the point is. It's not causing blatant things to happen. It's the whole point to advance the demonic agenda, so to speak, would be just to cause as
Chaos.
much suffering and pain as possible. And that's really what it is. The Hollywood thing of them possessing an individual body and making you murder people or do things is kind of, it's very one shot. It's very ineffective in the long term.
No, and that's the thing too. People think, oh yeah, the devil made me do it. That's a popular adage. That was a popular adage in like the 80s when they thought that music was making people this, that, and the third. I'm one who thinks that it was already there. If you're going to do something like that, you're already planning on doing something like that.
Exactly.
It's not something that you're like, well, I was a mild-mannered person. I just went to work for 3 weeks and, I decided I'm going to murder my wife because, Joe Beelzebub told me to do it. I think it's more of like you were already that mental state. And once you're in that mental state, that's just it's easy to push somebody off of a ledge if they're standing close to it. If a person's standing 300 feet away from the ledge, it's not that easy. And so I think a lot of times people will give demons all of that ability, that power, right? And say, this is what demons do. But I think it's more along the lines of, nobody's going to know if you, don't turn that money you found in, or nobody's going to know if you step on your neighbor to get $20. It's more along that line than it is take your neighbor out, sacrifice a goat or two. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's all of that. Because like you said, and thank you for the raid, Scruffy. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. What's up, JD? What's going on, guys? I had to switch over to my Twitch just to make sure it was a raid. It's more along the lines of in that vein, because the demons we encounter in the Testament of Solomon, which of course your boy's got it right on.
I mean, it is your book.
They more or less are heeding
right.
what Solomon tells them to do. He's got this ring that was given to him by the archangel Michael, and it has his seal on it. So whenever he is sending a letter or moving something across, he's stamping it down. Okay. This ring allows him to make demons build this temple to God. Ironically enough, because they don't worship God, but once again, Solomon has this power over them. And a lot of people have been looking for that ring. That ring has been highly sought after. However, it may not have been a ring at all. It may have been something completely different. We just take the translation as a ring and think, okay, it was on his finger because obviously, your royalty, you got your your signet here in the ring itself. That's your seal. Okay. But it could have been something completely different.
Maybe it was a key.
Could have been words. It could have been a series of words to force demons to do Solomon's bidding, because nobody's ever found the ring. And, unless this is the new Indiana Jones movie, I doubt they would be able to find that ring, because I feel like that's an Indiana Jones movie that should have written itself at this point. Instead of the Crystal Skull, which we won't get into because that wasn't a very good movie. But I feel like at this point, we would have had some more leads on that ring. So I don't necessarily know if it was a ring or not. It could have been something completely different. But ring was the most iconic thing they could think of when the book itself was written. Because a lot of your biblical books are written in AD. They're written after the death of Christ, because a lot of it's just passed down word of mouth knowledge. Some of it was written on scrolls and buried in caves in Qumran. All of these, like the Testament of Solomon, isn't in the canonical Bible itself. I had to pull this from a book that I've got called the Complete 54 Book Apocrypha. 54 books that aren't in the actual Bible itself because of the Council of Nicaea. Thoughts, gentlemen? Do you think demons can possess people in ways like The Exorcist or in ways like The Omen?
Well, before I get into that real quick, I just want to mention to build off what you were saying about the key or the ring, really. In modern occult circles, um, the ring is less a physical object and more a written down series of
Yep.
instructions on it, on demon
Ricky How.
names and kind of because the thought was around the time, and it's still something that I actually kind of think about this a lot during the modern day, is that
Mhm.
if you use someone's true name rather than a
Yeah.
nickname or something else, then you have power over them.
And in the
And
book,
we don't.
he looks for their real names and he makes
Mhm.
them tell him their real names via that ring. He says, "You will
Enochian,
tell
right?
me your real name." What?
Well,
Enochian,
that's
right?
later. That's with John Dee,
Okay.
but he
Yeah,
did
that's a whole other
popularize a
thing.
lot of that. He did
Right.
popularize a lot of that. But the Lesser and Greater Key of Solomon, the two books
Mhm.
that occultists generally use as reference points, list supposedly. I mean, I've got copies of both, and you can see all the names there. But whether they're actual names or somebody didn't just make them up and throw a bunch of Scrabble letters together and be like, "There's a demon name right there." But they're supposed to have all the true names and all the ways, like you have to use this material on this time of day with these incantations and this to summon it correctly, or it's going to do something damaging to you. Um, and so it became over time in the medieval age less about a physical controlling object and more about knowing. It was the knowledge. The knowledge was the ring, and that was the key. Those are the
Knowledge is
keys of
power.
Solomon. Um, as far as getting back to your original question, as far as getting to possession and things of that nature, I'm a super skeptical person about a lot of things like that. I think the concept of demonic possession has been really kind of over the top a lot. It's still big in Catholicism. Catholicism still practices exorcisms on a fairly regular basis, especially in places that you could consider possibly the less developed world. Certain places in South America and things like that, you hear a lot about exorcisms. And that kind of is a little suspect to me because that means that those are people who might not know better. And that's why you go there and do the exorcisms. Exorcisms. A little bit
Exorcism.
of exorcisms. But
He had one too many exorcisms.
you go there and it's people who may not know better because they haven't been exposed to this kind of behavior before, and they just have a mental illness or they have something going on like a chemical imbalance, and it's like, oh, that's demonic possession, we have to do all this, and it's a way to get converts to the church. It's not as successful as it used to be. Now, everybody's got the internet.
Right.
Even some of the poorest countries in the world have access to the internet a lot of times and can look up things and are less believing into that kind of thing. That's, you still get a bit of that. Can a spiritual being actually possess a person? If you believe in that kind of thing, then I would concede it is possible because they're insubstantial beings. They can interact with you in ways that a physical being cannot.
Right.
If we're keeping it all hypotheticals and we're accepting the existence of a spiritual or an energy being, then sure, that kind of thing could happen. Whether it's as often as we hear about in different cases, I don't think it's quite as prevalent, but it is legitimately possible in certain rare circumstances. And I think the key is trying to find those cases that are the most legitimate and seeing what you can do to combat against that kind of thing.
Okay. What do you think, Steven?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure if I believe in demons like as physical entities in the first place. I think it's more like you were saying a minute ago, Rob, about them being like, demons are less actual creatures and more just the negative aspects of humanity, like greed, lust, envy,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But if demons are actual entities, as far as them, possessing people, I think it would depend on the strength of each individual demon in each particular case.
Right. No, I agree because it tells us that some demons are weaker. The classifications for demons are weaker. They give like Grand Duke. There's a Grand Duke, and then there's a Duke, and there's like
A
foot
prince and a
soldiers.
king.
And the barons and the various, a
Yes.
lot of medieval titles.
Yes. Once again, playing off the medieval time that we're talking of. You know what I mean? This is a lot of stuff that was
Mhm.
prevalent in the medieval ages. And once again, medieval ages, the idea or the notion of demonic possession carries kind of on into our colonial aspect, right? Because a lot of superstitious beliefs regarded these entities being able to enter you and making pacts with said entities, which is a whole nother
leading to
avenue.
the witch trials.
Yes. But making these pacts, because people said that you can make pacts with demons.
Mhm.
But you had to go about it in a way, once again, you had to learn their name. That's if you could get their real name. Okay. And these pacts are dangerous because there's always something to be taken from the exchange of a demon or a jinn or any supernatural being that you are putting something out there on the line for. There's always what's known as equivalent exchange. So while you might have riches, it might be a monkey's paw wish, meaning you got riches, but those riches were stolen from a bank. So now you're wanted for robbing a bank. That's the monkey's paw wish mentality. You want something, but there's a catch to it. There's something hooked in. Oh, you married you wanted the most beautiful woman on the planet, your wife. Cool, she's really an axe murderer.
And she dies the next day.
Or something like that. Yes. Yes, something like that. And then you have to pay back what you have put out there as collateral for said concepts and beliefs. Now, I will ask you this. Do you believe these pacts with demons are real? Do you think this is something that can really happen?
I believe two different ways about this. If you take it as an obvious that you're dealing with an extraplanar, interdimensional entity of some kind, then sure, because then you look at it historically, if they're fallen angels, hypothetically, then angels are supposed to be order, whereas demons are chaos. But being descended from order would mean that you are aware of rules and laws and regulations. And a demon would then use those rules and laws and regulations to twist you up, to trip you up, to get you locked into a contract. Because people do that as humans every day. You get locked into contracts that look pretty good when you first sign up, and then you find out a little while later, man, this really sucks. I'm owing this much interest. I'm owing this on this. I got to trade this. It's demons are like that, but better. And if you make a mistake and trip up, they got you.
I want to point out something that Gnarly said. He said, and can these pacts be made by thought alone? That is, some circles believe that's the case, while others, I don't believe that. No, personally, it can't be made by thought. You have to give something up to make the pact, whether it's your own blood being your life force, whether it's somebody else's blood, whether it's a sacrificial of an animal. Yes, I don't think it can be thought, because by thought only, then everybody would be making pacts left and right. But I will say this, I will add this in here. What if these are just self-fulfilling prophecies? You think you have pushed your brain to a point and a level where you think, okay, I'm making a pact with Beelzebub or Baal or Asmodean or Asmodeus or Astaroth, one of them, right? So you believe it. You wholeheartedly believe it. So your brain creates it. Like, okay, I'm going to create this entity, right? And then you're going to make a pact with it. And so you're going to live that pact out because your brain has already thought it through, unlike a logical brain that would say, I don't think that's necessarily correct, or I need to read up on it more.
And that's modern occultism. Modern occultism is less about making deals with an entity, whether it exists or not, and it's more about using your willpower to say, hey, I'm going to make this deal with this thing, and then I'm going to stick with it. It's about repetition to make sure that you stick with it, and then it becomes habit, and then it comes true at that point. It's very similar to the New Age concept of manifesting, which can be used in good or bad ways. It's great for people trying to be like, hey, I'm going to manifest that I'm going to have a better life. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are other people that are going like, I'm going to do this at the expense of this and this and this. And they look at it from the wrong perspective. And it's almost the exact same behavior as making a pact. It's like, hey, you know what? I want this, and I don't care who or what or anything gets in the way. I'm going to put every bit of my mind towards getting this
Yeah.
thing. And it can cause you to lose connections with family. It can cause you to lose connections with friends, with society as a whole. It can turn you into a pretty difficult person to be around, to put it mildly. But you may get what you want in the end because you've just been ruthless.
Yeah, yeah. And that the manifesting actually works. They've done studies where somebody has they eat, sleep it, what they believe in, they say the mantra in the morning when they get up, and then they go about their day, and it happens. And I
And
do
I believe
believe it's
that
a very
100%.
powerful thing. Yes, so do I. So do I, because you're telling yourself, I'm gonna make it regardless, no matter what.
Mm.
Can that work in a negative aspect? Sure. But I think the positive aspect always wins out on the negative. Because of that. Like, it's easier to say, you know what, I'm gonna get up and have a better day than I'm gonna get up and summon some demons.
Power of
Right?
positive thinking.
Power of positive thinking. Nobody's talking about the power of negative thinking, but there is a power in negative thinking.
Mhm.
There is a
Call it a
power in
curse.
that. Whether it's good or bad, there's still a power in negative thinking. Now, the thing is, what a lot to summon some of these entities. And I have a Arabic grimoire and behind me that I can summon stuff from. I don't do that, by the way. I'm not a person that summons anything because I don't like to play with something that I don't understand, or I don't want to create the self-fulfilling prophecy in my own head. You know, what are your thoughts? Do you think that that's really how you summon a demon, or do you think it's just as simple as maybe putting out, "Hey, I want this. I'll give you this." Not dropping like the feather of an owl at 2 a.m. in the morning, or the Virgin's right ear on the second Saturday of October at 7:36 p.m. Do you think that's just showboating? Do you think whatever entity you're trying to summon just does that for a joke? Or do you think there's power behind it? Do you think by summoning them with those things, you're giving it more power?
I think it's like you said, it's just kind of showboating, and they just want to do that just because they think it's funny, and they're like, "What can I make this person do to try to summon me?" And they're
Right.
actually like, I don't know what the proper word is. I don't omnipotent maybe. Like they always know. Like if you want to summon a demon, I feel like they know, but they won't show up unless you do the things. Like for each individual, demon has their own ritual,
They
I guess.
do. They do.
Okay.
You got to summon to like one corner of the world, like the northeast summons this one, because there are demons that are northwest, south, and east, and they're represented in those four winds or those four directions. And there's also demons at this quadrant, in this quadrant, and so you got to summon precisely in this quadrant because you don't want to summon this one in this quadrant because that causes an issue between two different demons. It's two different things.
They're tied to concepts, they're tied to
Yeah.
forces, and they're tied to certain metals. Like some
Mhm.
will come if you use iron, some will come if you use gold, some will come if you even more obscure things.
What about heavy metal?
Well, I mean, that
Don't
could
let
be a
him,
thing.
don't let him.
But
You mean like uranium and stuff?
Yeah, we'll go.
I see what I
but
did there. Heavy metals.
the
Nice save.
that's another thing in modern occultism where you have two different camps for modern occult
Right.
workers. You have people who actually believe everything that's out there is an entity, which I'm not going to say is valid or invalid. But you have the other camp that says, really, this is just trying to convince your own mind that something is going to work, i.e., manifesting. And by having more variables in play, it creates a more believable scene for your mind.
So
And
you're
that's
saying
why,
basically you're creating a middleman.
that's right.
You're creating a demonic middleman, as it were, to help see through your things that you want
Mhm.
out of life. Like, oh, I want a 24 karat gold ring, so I got to summon, Beelzebub to give me that 24 karat diamond ring. because I could do it myself, but I need the extra steps.
Yeah, you have to kind of convince yourself that this is distinct from some other demon. Like you can't just go and be like, oh well, today I'm going to summon Asmodean to do this, and then you just do it. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to do Beelzebub, and you just do it. And your brain, as a logical thinking thing, for most of us, some of us don't, have that quite as well. But I mean, for most people, as a logical thing, it'd be like, no, it's not going to work. This is silly. So you have to assign things to different demons. That's the whole purpose behind most ritual behavior. You have to have, okay, I need to have a knife that's been consecrated on the full moon for this many days because that's what this
right.
being likes. And even if you in the daytime can be like, you know what, all this is crap, there's no actual entities, you're convincing your mind to go along with the story, to go along with the play, to help your willpower and your manifestation occur. And that's where a lot of it goes to. That's the other half. That's the other camp that you have. You have either belief that the entities are real, or you have the half that says, I have to convince myself that this is going to work somehow. And the best way to do it is to have all these steps and variables unique to this action that I'm trying to do rather than this other one. If I want to do riches, I have to do this. If I want to do romance, I have to do this.
Right.
If I want to do something else, I have to do this.
Because there's a demon for each cardinal win.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want love to blow in this direction, you need to summon so-and-so in order to make that happen. Thank you, Scruffy, for the raid. I appreciate you. Give me 1 second. I'm going to drop because I can just shout him out from the Twitch account. It's all good. If you haven't gone and seen the Scruffmeister, go subscribe to him today. Go to the channel and like it and comment on it. Tell him we sent you all the time. Every time he streams, tell him we sent you. Yeah, because there's cardinal winds that take place, and in Islam, when you're summoning jinn, they have a jinn for each cardinal wind. Location, 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 and that location has its sub variables. Okay, so you want the cardinal east wind to summon so and so. Well, they're the principle of love, emotions, things of that nature. But you want to summon the north. Well, that's money, that's fortune, that's fame, so on and so forth. So you're basically just creating these middlemen to lead to your true desires, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, because again, if you had such an astounding level of willpower that you could just manifest things by thought alone, you wouldn't need any of that. But most of us can't do that. I can't just look at the space on the floor in front of me and be like, I'm going to have a cake right there, right now. Boom, it's going to be there. My willpower is considerable, but it's not going to manifest me a cake right there this very instant.
Well, not with that
I just
attitude,
can't do
it won't.
Well, absolutely, and that's it too.
But what I think that does is it sets your brain up to get cake. It
Yeah.
sets your brain up to move in a way that now you can summon a demon to take your soul to get you a piece of cake.
You can only manifest with action.
And so you have the extra steps involved because it helps move your brain along the path in a way that, okay, yeah, I do all these things a little bit at a time. Eventually, I'm going to get some cake. So then the next time I get some cake, I'm going to be like, I obviously manifested this cake.
And
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Are you creating the middleman of the demon so that you have somebody to blame other than yourself if it doesn't work out?
That's a good point as well. Because if you're an occult person, you can't consider that kind of thing because you don't blame anybody. You're supposed to just be like, hey, I'm going to do this. And if it doesn't work, you have to say, okay, it didn't work. I'll do something else.
Right.
If you're not of that same mind frame and you just think I can create this thing, then yeah, you're going to constantly have negative thoughts about it and nothing ever is going to go right for you.
Right.
And that's a good difference. That's, again, even in the occult world, power of positive thinking. Because if you allow the negative to come in, you're never going to get it. If you keep with the positive, even with a setback, you can be like, okay, well, that didn't work this time, but now I know, so I can tinker with it and make it work next time. And it's a constant evolving thing. And that kind of takes the place of thinking that there's another entity involved. You just take your responsibility and you move forward.
Right. But people won't. because they look at those entities as being a supernatural
That's
way to
where you
get
get the
something you want.
derangements. That's where people start going crazy. That's where people start doing things that are like messing up their whole lives and doing things that are really quote unquote sinful, but are more like
Or
just bad,
debaucherous
terrible
even.
things.
Or debaucherous even, you know?
Mm.
Because you're starting to step up. And what I've noticed too is like your more intricate demon summonings, because I've never met anybody that's actually tried to summon a demon. I don't have friends that do that. You might have done it maybe years ago. Maybe
Not per
goofing.
se. Not per se.
But in terms of like, I need an arm from a gorilla at the zoo and some rose petals, and I need to have moon water at 12:55 a.m. I don't know anybody that's ever done this. I'm not saying these things haven't been done, and I know people will leave certain things out, like a lot of your folks that are witchcraft practitioners, they'll leave certain things out in the moonlight to clean it,
Mhm.
to sort of cleanse it, if you will, not so
Yeah.
much clean, but cleanse it. But in terms of watching somebody say, I'm going to summon this demon, I think your demons are summoned more by your lust for something, or your willingness to do whatever it takes to get ahead in life. So you're letting in those negative things, which are demons in their own right. And that is what's causing your chaos. I don't necessarily believe that, you can make pacts like that. I think a lot of the times they're self-fulfilling prophecies.
Mm.
I don't know, like the Annalise Michael tragedy, I should say. A lot of time that happens because I don't think people have a good understanding of human beings mentally, if that makes sense. They don't understand, this is how the brain works. Back then, anyways. Today we
Even
have
today, honestly,
no.
like
You're not
we're
wrong.
so far advanced, but we still can't understand why certain people have depression, and we can't understand why certain people
Right.
just
We
can't
don't
deal
even
with things. So
understand how to tell if someone's brain activity is a dream or not when they're asleep.
yeah, we just have the
Like,
indicator that we assume it's REM sleep, so you assume it's
It's
dreaming,
your
but
eye
maybe it isn't.
flutterings. It's like
Yeah,
the eye
maybe it isn't.
flutterings. So, no, that's a good point. We're getting ready to kind of wind it down a little bit. Final thoughts here. Are demons real? Do you think demons are real in the sense that they are these beings like Asmodan, Ashtaroth, Lilith, folks like that? Do you think these are real entities, or do you think they're the conjuration of the man mind, of a man's mind?
I think it's the second one you said. I don't think they're actual physical creatures. I think even in the stories that personify demons, I think they're still just supposed to be like lessons, metaphorical lessons, and the demons personify negative human emotions. Like, can I talk about Asmodeus for like 1 minute real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Hurry up.
Okay, real quick. Asmodeus was like the ultimate Giga Chad because real quick, I'm gonna speed through this, but not too fast. Basically, what he
I
did
just have
is
to say,
oh, go ahead.
everybody I've ever known who's been named Chad has not been like that. They've always been kind
No,
of more of the loser type.
they've
I'm
never
just saying.
lived up to the whole Giga Chad mentality.
All Chads have been not
Yeah. Oh,
great at all.
Asmodeus lived up to it though. So what he
Yeah,
did
he
is
is with it.
he murdered 7 men because this woman named Sarah, he had an obsession with her. Oh, this
I
was
remember
after he
this.
escaped from Solomon, but we're skipping
Yep.
over that because too much. But so he was obsessed with this woman named Sarah, and he murdered 7 men to be with this woman. And then it's in the book of Tobit, I believe it was called. And
Tobit,
Tobiah, the
T-O-B-I-T.
son, it goes on this whole quest from Archangel Michael to go
Yep.
save Sarah. And he's like, this demon killed 7 people. And he like cuts the heart out of an alligator and throws it into the fire to defeat this demon that's already murdered like 7 men. And he's like, nobody. He's like weak. And he's like, what do I got to do this? But the point was he murdered 7 men to be with her, and he's like, I'll just keep murdering people until you decide to marry me. So she's like, yeah, I'll just kill myself.
Yeah, because suitors would no longer want to try to suit her because they were dying. I mean, think about that. I wouldn't want to, unless you're going to be a big, strong man and step up and be like, all right, let's go. For the most part, no, you're going to be like, okay, she keeps getting with these guys and they're dying. Either
So-
A,
Yeah.
she's killing them, right? She's doing the old insurance racket. Or B, there's something behind that.
Yeah. So
There's something there.
basically, I think that they're more
Thank
like
you, James.
stories, like trying to teach people lessons about life
Thank you,
and,
Huff.
morals and stuff. And
Right.
I think that Asmodeus, his story in particular, was about, well, let's say lust and infidelity,
Okay.
to put it simply.
Okay. Spider.
I think that a long time ago, way back, there were individuals of influence and power who did things that cemented them in the minds of the people that came after. Just like everything else, I see a lot of our legends and mythology about the demigods and the gods and things like Hercules and all these people. I see all of this based in fact somewhere, based
Right.
on someone who did something great or something terrible or something that was perceived as great or terrible, whether it was or
Right.
not.
Right.
And their names carried forward
Yeah.
as a cautionary tale. And now we're to the point today where the evolved version of whatever the name is has become, hey, if you do this, this guy's going to come out and he's going to get your soul. He's
Yeah.
going to get this. He's going to get that. And I think we invoke those things because of what they did in the past.
Okay.
I'm all about energy. I've talked about it many times on the show. I think there are different beings that work with different energies than we do, that could be from different planets or different dimensions. And so I'm not discounting the idea of demonic per se beings that are just bent on destroying everything around them. But as far as meddling in the modern day, like people claim, I don't think it's quite that way anymore. And I think it's just the way that the game of prehistoric telephone has advanced and taken an idea or a person that did a thing way back and magnified it, and now they're a boogeyman.
I think they do exist. I don't think they have the same power that they used to, because humanity moves on. We broke from the supernatural, and now we're into the more materialistic. So what they've did is they've switched up their patterns to feed off of the materialism of human beings, and are
Politician.
able to do that.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a prime example. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Greed and lust and all that, those are the arbitrary demonic possessions. Could there be entities behind that sort of pushing that along? It's possible. But I think mankind at the end of the day makes his own decisions. At the end of the day, we make the choice if we're going to lust after an object, a woman, a man, whatever. We make that decision at the end of the day. I don't think anything makes that for you. I think mankind, God knows what you're going to do, so the decisions are going to be made to you. So that's just some thoughts that I had. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for our talk on demons. It was a different show this time. We didn't go into our brand name demons. We didn't get into discuss, because we talked about that before, about demons. We talked about them, their characteristics, where they came from. But I wanted a more natural, free-flowing conversation regarding demons, demonic possession, energy involving demons, and so on and so forth.
Demonic presenters.
Wow. If there's a topic that you would like to see, please let us know in the comments, or send it to me via Google Mail, Gmail, as it were, at thisuncanny@gmail.com. I had a thing. It messed up on me. thisuncanny@gmail.com. Any experiences you have, anything of that nature, please send it out to us, and we will 100% send that cat to your house.
I don't know. He's kind of crazy.
Oh, he's crazy. Crazy cat at the house.
My daughter would be upset. It's my daughter's cat.
Oh, can't do that then. Can't do that then. Next week, we'll have another great topic for you guys. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you, all of you amazing, beautiful folks, next week. Spooky. We got in stream.